So here it finally is, the DJI Mavic 3 CINE. This is the premium combo. We've been waiting years for this. My video on the Mavic 2 Pro was what, over 3 years ago? I sometimes hate doing the math on these things. It makes me realize how much time has passed. It's still when I was living in that apartment. I've moved like 4 times since then. I used to have less of a double chin too. I should probably start hitting that treadmill again. Oh, interesting. It looks like this converts into a backpack as well. So we'll have to try that out. Let's go ahead and open this main compartment, and there it is. Now this has a ton more capability than the Mavic 2 Pro, but still maintains a very similar size and shape when it's folded down like this. Instead of that lens cover, it looks like it's got this whole harness on it. Now here is the beautiful new dual camera. Up top is a telephoto lens. It's a 1/2-inch sensor, 161mm equivalent. And under that is the 4/3" 20 megapixel sensor. Now we got sensors in every direction all around this thing. They told me that the obstacle avoidance is supposed to be improved on this, so we'll have to try that out. The big old battery slides at the back here. It's 77 watt-hours, and it's supposed to give us 46 minutes of flight time, which is pretty insane. Folds just the same, and let me see if I can figure out how to attach this harness thing on. It seems like it's gonna take a little bit of getting used to, but it does tuck away all the propellers and camera pretty nicely. We also get instruction manuals, 3-bay battery charger, and a ton of propellers, ND filters. They give us 8 in total. This bag's pretty nicely designed. There's space for all the batteries, and this is the new Pro controller. Looks pretty similar to the previous one. We will be able to fly this with a regular controller with our phones as a screen, but I just love having a screen built into the controller. That's just one less thing to plug in and turn on and set up. I'm gonna get this all charged up, and I wanna test out that ProRes 5.1K. So let's try that out while Dylan tells you about today's sponsor.
The end of the day. And while it seems like this time runs out, you know what doesn't run out? Is Storyblock's unlimited all-access plan, allowing you to have an endless summer with everything you'd ever desire. With one affordable subscription, Storyblock offers unlimited royalty-free downloads. That's incredibly easy to use and won't bug you like all these bugs in my face right now. Unfortunately, after this shot, we ran out of light. But luckily, Storyblock has over 1 million royalty-free stock assets, so we use their videos as a transition to the next day. But it's not only videos that Storyblock offers, but music like you hear now, images like of this frog, and graphic templates that say stuff. All these features in just one affordable subscription makes it better than a fast food value menu. Looking to level up the quality of your own videos? Click the link below and start telling your own story today.
All right, how'd that footage look? Hopefully pretty good. I was hoping we'd get a little bit more sunshine, but it's been a little bit cloudy here. How many gigs was the sponsorship segment? Like probably 150 gigs or something like that?
Probably.
You got to be careful with ProRes 422 HQ. Now, when it comes to flight performance, we get slightly more power, 21 meters a second opposed to the 20 meters a second we got on the Mavic 2 Pro. That's a difference of just a little bit over 2 miles per hour. You know, not much, but hey, I'll take it.
Seems like 21 meters per second to me.
But it definitely feels a lot punchier when we're trying to ascend at a faster rate. We get 8 meters a second opposed to the 5 meters a second we used to get. So that is actually really impressive. We're able to climb straight up at almost 18 miles per hour. But here's the thing, this video isn't gonna be that in-depth because there's a huge firmware update coming, and it's gonna come a little bit after this announcement happens. So I'm definitely gonna have to do a follow-up. Right now, the features we're missing is like 4K 120, HD 200 frames per second. And Dylan, you're like standing awfully close to the edge there. You sure you wanna just be
right
right
there? My life.
Now, when it's folded up, it seems pretty comparable in size to the Mavic 2 Pro, but when it's opened up, it does seem to have a wider wingspan, and I do really like the amount of clearance that we're getting here. It has that taller stance, so if you're trying to take off from dirt or rocks, you're gonna have more clearance for this gimbal, so you're not gonna get that motor overloaded message that you sometimes get. So the top lens is locked in at f4.4 on that 1/2-inch sensor, but the bottom one does give us that f2.8 to f11, which is what we got on the Mavic 2 Pro, so it's nice to still see that we still get that aperture control. That definitely gives it an edge over something like the Air 2S where it's a locked-in aperture. So instead of adjusting our exposure with shutter speed or ISO, we can now adjust a lot of that exposure in the iris if we want to. Now this is the new Pro controller. It seems pretty similar to the previous one. It does seem a little bit bigger, but we do seem to get better performance out of this. Now we have this charging hub charging these 3 one at a time, but what I also thought was really cool is you can also just plug this straight into the drone and charge it with this USB-C port right here, which is great if you're trying to pack ultra light or you're going backpacking where every ounce counts. You can also just take this little brick right here, which is not too big. It's like this size, throw that in your bag, and you can also charge your drone. Did I also mention that the CINE version has a terabyte of internal storage, a terabyte. All right, so here's a question. How long does it take to turn on the drone and the controller and get it up in the air? So let's start the timer, and here we go. I had a few issues with the app and all that. Here, let me try one more time. Round 2, and there, that was better, right? Now, one of the things I like about DJI's newer drones is that they tend to go up in the air faster and easier. They don't ask you for compass calibrations all the time and all this other stuff. So it's always nice to be able to just get it out of your bag and get it up in the air as quickly as possible. Now let's talk about the telephoto lens, which is something that I was really excited about, but I'm starting to have some mixed feelings about it. Again, this could all just be because it's early firmware, but here, let me just show you what I mean. Now here's what the user interface looks like, and in order to access the telephoto lens, I have to enter something called Explore mode. So once I enter that, few things happen. I now am in 4K 30 instead of the 24 frames per second I was in. I actually can't change that frame rate or anything like that as of now. But right now, if I try to manually control that exposure, it says right here, Explore mode only supports auto mode. So the only way to really adjust it is to adjust the EV. I could underexpose or overexpose a bit, but I want to control that shutter speed. Now let's go ahead and start recording, and I can zoom in. We're at 2x, 3x, 4, and notice it goes from 4 to 7. And when that 4 to 7 jump happens is when it switches between lenses. At 4.4, you're having less light hit that sensor. So I typically feel like I get the best results if I just pull off the ND filters off the telephoto lens, which can be a little bit of a hassle because sometimes I want the ND filters on the bottom lens, but not the telephoto lens. Now we can also digitally zoom up to 28. So let's see how that looks. I mean, I personally wouldn't really go this far. I haven't been able to get much good results. I mean, this is what 12x looks like, which is just a little bit of digital zoom on top of the telephoto lens. You can see Dylan in here, and it actually is kind of cool. I do feel like a spy right now, like target acquired. So I really love having this lens, but without that manual control and being able to adjust my shutter speed, I just don't know what it's doing. And a lot of times I feel like the shutter speed is just left open too long to where everything looks kind of blurry and mushy with that motion blur. All right, so I just got some pricing information. You guys ready for this? Mavic 3 CINE combo, 4,909, basically $5,000. Oh, more than I was expecting, but I knew it was going to be a lot. I mean, you're getting 1 terabyte internal. It's got that ProRes 422, as well as that, new Smart Pro controller. So I knew it was going to add up about $5,000. Oh, I mean, like, how much is an Inspire? Inspire 2 X5S standard kit for $5,300. So this is basically on par with the Pro drone. So this is no longer a hobbyist drone. This is a Pro drone. Now the question is, how many of us really need the CINE version in that ProRes 422? Well, I feel like the codec kind of speaks for itself. Like, if you know you need ProRes, then this is your option here. But the footage is always really great to work with, no compression issues, and it's just easy on your computer, and it has lots of flexibility. Although the file sizes is something you really have to remember. 5.1K ProRes 422 HQ is pretty massive. I wonder if they'll just give us just standard ProRes 422 or even 422 LT on here. Eventually, that's something I would like to add on my wish list for the firmware update, because I like ProRes, but not always 422 HQ. Is it worth that $5,000 price range? I think if you're a professional and this is how you make your living and it's gonna make its money back, like having a ProRes drone that's not huge, it could be a good tool for the arsenal. But I definitely think we're gonna be seeing a lot more of the standard Mavic 3s go off the shelves. And without ProRes, we're gonna be dealing with H.264 or H.265. And I think we're gonna be seeing a lot more H.265 going forward, because we're dealing with much smaller file sizes with better image quality. The biggest problem is how much load it puts onto your computer. It'll lock up your Premiere, your editing software, and barely be able to play back. But with the newer computers coming out that are more optimized for H.265, like that MacBook M1X that I'm still waiting for, can't wait for it, but that's supposed to be able to just blast through H.265. So I think we're gonna be slowly switching some workflow over. Now, I did shoot some H.265, but for whatever reason, it's not compatible with this version of Premiere. So I'm gonna have to do further testing once the compatibility gets sorted out through updates or whatever. Now, here's a few shots I got in H.264 in D-Log and color graded it. And for the most part, it looks really good, but there were sometimes a few signs of the codec not being able to keep up with the fast moving image. Like, you see this blue bag kind of bleeding into the dirt, and you see a little bit of red where there shouldn't be off the bike. And check out this shot here. You can see that green kind of bleeding off this plant right here as we're moving in. You see that green kind of bleeding into the the right here, and check out this plant here also. It's green here, but then it kind of bleeds into this area. Like there should be no green here, and I'm pretty sure this is because the fast motion on top of the D-Log is just pushing that H.264 past its limit. Now, of course, with ProRes, you don't have to worry about any of this, and with H.265, it's most likely going to be better. But if I'm shooting H.264, I think I'm most likely gonna stick to shooting in normal color, especially if what I'm filming is fast moving action. Now, of course, normal color does not get as much dynamic range or flexibility as log, but it still looks really good just straight out of the camera. They're saying the colors are new and improved by using Hasselblad's natural color solution. But yeah, as far as I can see, everything seems pretty pleasant and natural. I'm not gonna color grade any of this so you can see it for yourself. Getting into the darker hour, here's a shot at ISO 800, looks pretty clean. And here's a shot at ISO 1600. A majority of us aren't really allowed to fly at night anyways, so low light is not as crucial in a drone, but it looks pretty decent here at 1600 ISO. You can access ISO 6400 in ProRes D-Log. Definitely some noise, but it still looks pretty sharp and clear. So I think around January is when I'll be able to get the upgraded firmware, which is going to give us active track. That's one of the things I really want to try out and pretty excited for with these new sensors. Like here, I'm just flying around for like 20 minutes trying to crash this into things, and it definitely sensed everything. So I definitely think that there is improvements in terms of the obstacle avoidance. You know, the Mavic 2 Pro had sensors in every direction like this, but it was still pretty easy to crash it into things if you wanted to. I was tempted to test out the limitations of what these sensors can see, but I'm not ready for that quite yet, especially now that I know that this thing's worth $5,000. Maybe when the new firmware update comes out, I'll put it through a few more riskier situations, but not yet. One thing worth mentioning is that you can still go top speed in sport mode on this and keep that camera looking straight ahead, which is nice. One thing I didn't like about the Mavic 2 Pro is once you hit a certain speed, the camera gimbal wasn't able to continue looking forward and would eventually dip down. So that is not an issue here, so that is good to see. And we're also able to tilt up 35 degrees. Now, one thing I will miss is the ability to pan the camera left or right. So you could be flying straight, but then still have the camera look over to the left, I think just over 70 degrees. But here we are limited to 5 degrees. That was a feature I used to like a lot if I was flying parallel to something. And instead of having to fly at that perfect diagonal angle, I could just fly it straight and just turn the camera. Anyways, I need to upload this video in probably like an hour or so. So I gotta start wrapping this up. Overall, I think what's really impressive about this Mavic 3 Pro is the 4/3 inch sensor on such a small drone. I mean, we're getting bigger and better cameras in every Mavic that comes out. It's actually kind of surprising. You're like 20 feet above us right now, and we can actually kind of feel the wind. It's moving a lot of air. But in terms of the aircraft, I think it's really amazing because we're getting over 40 minutes of flight time, which is insane. I mean, I remember when they first went over 20 minutes, we were like, whoa, how are you gonna fly for that long? Even now, it's like over 40 minutes, and it's faster, it's stronger, and the obstacle avoidance is better. So everything is just like, yes, 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 cool, new things. I'm still waiting for this active track because I don't wanna manually have to follow myself. Like, this feels like I'm a caveman or something. We need this thing to follow us by itself, which we will in the next firmware update. So follow-up video when that comes out. We're also getting more range with this O3 Plus transmission, and they're saying up to 15 kilometers of range.
That's crazy. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, and the return to home in case you lose connection with your controller is supposed to be smarter, so it's less likely to crash into things on the way back. It's supposed to be able to navigate back better in a smarter direction. Check this out, telephoto mode. So we can see ourselves even though it's all the way out there, which is pretty impressive. I'm convinced DJI is gonna eventually give us access to that manual control and all that stuff, which would make this lens so much more useful, because right now I feel like it's more of just a little for fun lens, and it's cool having it. And when you're on this telephoto mode, they make these sticks way less sensitive, so you have more precision control. And the reach and perspective you're able to get out of this lens is really cool. But right now I still kind of feel like it's more of a toy rather than a tool, because I don't have those manual control. I'm actually convinced that DJI will eventually give us full manual control of this lens. I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, the hardware is already on there. You just have to just allow us to adjust a few things. All right, that's pretty much it. I gotta get back and edit this and upload this. So see you guys later.
Go cuddle your dogs.